good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
Sheriff, you're not cheating on your wife if you eat my lemon square.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking Chekhov's floorboards, we're talking wigs that look like goddamn cum rags, and we're talking every perfectly bleached asshole expires. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking My Tuck is Everlasting.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
That line. There's a couple of real banging lines in this movie, I'm not gonna lie.
There are a couple of real banging lines in this movie. Everyone, we are discussing 2021's Death Drop Gorgeous, the final entry in our underseen or underrated series that's kicked off 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And what a way to go out, huh?
Indeed, yeah, we had a number of really great candidates to kind of wrap this up. They were all independents. They all were definitely worthy of examination. But you and I have been talking about covering this film since we heard that it was doing the festival circuit. So we thought this is finally the opportunity to talk about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, Kay Lynch, the runner of that, I'm saying co-founder of Salem Horror Fest, and, you know, who you partnered with on Fright Gown, sent me the screener for this last summer and was like, I think you would really like this. And I was like, okay, cool. And I lost it. I just didn't watch it. So it's like, fuck you. Yeah, so I finally got around to watching it. I'm glad that we ended this with a very explicitly queer horror comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is all about the queer experience, for sure.
Absolutely. But there's so much queer here that I don't think we are queer enough to really discuss this film. So I think we need not one, but two guests to join us for this, Joe. So everyone, they are the creators of the pop culture blog Tom and Lorenzo, and the co-hosts of Tom and Lorenzo's Pop Style Opinion Fest, a podcast that renders judgment on all the latest goings-on in the world of celebrity, pop culture, television, and fashion. They are also the authors of Everyone Wants to Be Me or Do Me, Tom and Lorenzo's fabulous and opinionated guide to celebrity life and style, as well as Legendary Children, a book that serves a definitive deep dive into queer history and culture with hit reality show RuPaul's Drag Race. Please welcome Tom Fitzgerald and Lorenzo Marquez.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming.
That was a very impressive introduction, I gotta say.
I'm even impressed with myself. Amazing.
Your resume speaks volumes.
It sure does. I when someone reads it out like that, I'm like, wow, I am exhausted just listening to all that.
But you're also like, I'm so amazing, right?
I know.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, I get up every day and say that.
Oh my God, yeah.
So welcome to the show, y'all. Are you big horror fans?
This is Tom. I am, but Lorenzo is not. I have to drag him kicking and screaming sometimes.
Right, but it depends. It depends. I mean, I don't like to see a lot of blood and, you know, a lot of gore and things like that. But if it's a great, funny or a camp movie, yeah, I'm all for it.
Oh, good. Okay, so this is probably a very good fit for you then, Lorenzo, because there is some gratuitous violence, but it's often very comedically bent.
To be honest with you, I was laughing out loud, and some of the lines I couldn't stop laughing, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I would totally watch it again.
And I mean, as slasher films go, I don't really think this one was all that. And this isn't a criticism, but I just don't think it was all that hard to sit through. The murder scenes were so creative. I guess that's what I'm saying. That even Lorenzo could sit through most of them.
Right.
We'll get to the one he couldn't sit through, but I'm pretty sure you can guess which one he couldn't sit through.
Oh, yes.
It was funny because Tom was like, all right, you need to watch this until the point where they show his dick.
Yeah, we're going to get into that later.
and then you can, you know, close your eyes after that.
So keep them long enough to see the dick, but then close them immediately.
Of course.
Exactly.
Well, I had already seen that, and I was like, Lorenzo, you got to watch, because I don't know if that dick is real or a prosthetic, so you got to watch this part.
Right. We still don't know. We need to...
I'm pretty sure it was real.
Oh, I have thoughts.
I think it was real. I think
the shaft was was real and the head was fake.
I think we all want it to be real.
wait, Joe, did you just say you thought the shaft was real, but the head was fake?
Yeah, so when he sticks the dick into the glory hole, I think that's real dick, and I think the dick that comes out the other side is prosthetic.
I can't. How surprising that in under 5 minutes we went straight to the dick part of the conversation.
Okay, but it's because we live in a world where penises are suppressed in mainstream cinema, and so when you see a movie that just has a dick out in the first 30 minutes of the movie, it's a really big deal.
Yeah. I agree.
And it's the first murder of the film. Well, sort of. The second murder, because I don't count the junkie tweaker, and that is the language of the film, according to IMDb and not me.
You mean the tweaker that is snorting the chunkiest lines of coke that I've ever seen in my life?
That
was baking powder.
That is all-purpose flour.
I was just like, you're just wasting all of that. Like, you gotta crush that shit.
I mean, that's why he dies, because I don't think that's real coke.
No, there's like a toxic waste thing in the trunk, because he's like, oh, where'd you get this? And he looks behind, so I think it's like poison somehow. It doesn't matter.
We'll get there.
Oh, man. Okay, well, so this obviously is a low-budget film. We've covered films like this before, but not many, because this is like really, I mean, as y'all have said, we are entering into the world of camp, intentionally bad acting, or maybe not intentional sometimes, I don't know. And I just think that we talked beforehand, y'all said that some of y'all have watched this twice, and I actually needed to watch this twice, because I watched this the first time alone, in my living room, sitting on my couch, and I thought it was fine. I had a lot of problems with it, despite knowing that it's going for that kind of like trashy John Waters aesthetic.
Right.
Watch it today. I had a drink and I had 2 people with me, and it was a fucking blast. So I will recommend, if you have not seen this movie, listeners, maybe watch it with as many people and libations as you can.
I got to just jump in and say, I agree. I watched it alone the first time. And I was like, okay, this is all right. Yeah. And then I sat down with Lorenzo, and it's just a film that you need to interact with. So when there's another person there, it suddenly becomes much more entertaining.
100%.
Yeah.
I got to watch this at Fright Gown last June because Kay and I programmed it along with another film that was also similarly trashy, exploitative, very inappropriate blue humor. And they played so well with audiences. Even though we were all virtual, we were interacting and just repeating lines and talking about gags and stuff. And these are the kinds of movies that I think make us realize, oh shit, that's what we're missing during the pandemic, right? The communal movie-going experience. But these movies play like midnight movies to me, where you would throw this on, have a bunch of drinks, have a bunch of friends over, and just giggle and laugh your way through. And folks, if you haven't watched the film, it is now available on Shudder, so it's widely available.
I totally agree. I mean, when the movie was done, I turned to Tom and I said, I need to watch more shit like this because it was just fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, you know, you lower your expectations, obviously. But every now and then, I mean, because Tom went to film school, so every now and then he would say, this is a great shot, or, you know, this is a great moment. This looks like a decent budget movie. and then later on he was like, oh my god, it's out of focus right now.
I mean, this is clearly a labor of love. Like, we're not going to pretend as though this movie has the budget of a Marvel TV show or even probably a Marvel commercial.
Or a Blumhouse anything.
Right.
Yeah, like, this is not a multi-million-dollar movie, and you adjust your expectations accordingly. But yeah, I think what they pulled off here, considering how long it took them, the fact that they are dealing with non-professional actors, like, there's a lot to love about this movie.
I agree.
I will say, and I'll get this out of the way now because I'll probably comment on it a lot as we go through the plot. So my sticking point on my first viewing, I was just like, oh, like, I think there are some really funny jokes here, but the editing was really throwing me off because it's like, oh, it's taking an extra beat too long before it cuts away, or it takes an extra beat too long before someone replies to the joke, and it really kills any momentum for me. It was fixed a little bit on that second watch, but there are still times where I'm like, oh fuck, if you would just cut this like a split second sooner, this would have killed.
That is exactly what I said to Lorenzo when I watched it first. And I said, you know, this would be such a great, tight 85-minute film.
Yes.
Yeah. Wouldn't it? It would just be perfect if they could get it to under an hour and a half. And you're exactly right. Almost every single shot in the film is a second or two too long, either in the front of the shot or the back of the shot.
And there are 5 editors on this film, so I think someone just didn't. And I'm not trying to be mean here, but I think someone didn't do that job. I think whoever job that was. I do think the kill scenes are edited well, but you don't have to really worry about timing as much with those. A comedy is a much trickier thing and more scientific thing to edit.
Right.
And with this kind of movie, also, when you have actors doing jobs in different ways. One actor's doing a good job and the other one was like, oh my God, what are you doing? So, it's a little distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the acting does vary, and it's tricky, right? Because we also have some more naturalistic performances, and then we've got some really big, over-the-top performances, and I can see some of these being a little bit polarizing.
Oh, I mean, y'all, I'm probably not alone in thinking the least interesting character in this film is our final boy, Dwayne, right?
Oh, it's just because he doesn't get to do the exciting stuff, right? He doesn't get to be a big personality.
It is no fault of the actor Wayne Gonzalez. It's just like, there's nothing for this role. And also, he's not in the first half of the movie that much. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, right, this is our main character.
Right. He wasn't terrible. I don't want to single out anyone's performance as the worst one or, But you're right. I don't think that role was an easy one for anybody to pull off because it was kind of underwritten.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's funny because 2 of the directors are also acting in the movie, and they're like my least favorite performances. And I was like,
okay.
And I was like,
ooh, he went there.
I know, and I was like, couldn't you give those parts to somebody else?
I mean, in this case, and I'm sure Trace will walk us through how some of this film came together, but it might be, we can't afford to pay people / we can't afford to get people for this long.
Right.
Well, okay, that's a good segue. So why don't we talk about how this was made? Because unfortunately, Joe, this is one of the only films we have ever covered in our 3+ years of podcasting where there is not a Wikipedia page for this movie. So I went on a detective hunt and looked at a bunch of interviews with these people.
All right.
So, this film has 3 directors. Michael J. Ahern, Brandon Paris-Sanchez, and Christopher Dalby. And Christopher Dalby is the one that plays Brian in the film, our drag queen wannabe. Mm-hmm. So they filmed this movie over the course of a year and a half on nights and weekends because they all had jobs, be it nonprofit, bartending, the hospitality or music industries. So they just did this for fun over the course of a year and a half with a budget of roughly $20,000.
See, that's where I just tip my hat because holy shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The idea sprung up in 2015, about a year before they started writing the script. They were talking about how sex apps are really just made for serial killers, because obviously, as many of us probably know, horny men will skip a lot of red flags and find themselves in some pretty tumultuous situations while searching for dick.
Mm.
So a year later, they all got together and started to make a movie out of it. Now, all 3 of these directors are also the film's writers, but the film was a very collaborative effort. So, they had low production values, but while they had a script, they would frequently improv and change things during filming. They did have the time, after all, since this took a year and a half to film. But overall, what they were trying to accomplish was going for something in the vein of John Waters and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, with a little bit of Driller Killer thrown in the mix.
I can see it, yeah.
I can see all that, yeah.
So again, this is a movie that's, trying to be bad. And the John Waters aesthetic, I was, okay, I totally see that here. But I was trying to think to myself, I find it weird, maybe weird's the wrong word, but a 2022 movie trying to do John Waters, which is such a very specific style and time period.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like sometimes in movies that do that, and it is a lot of queer films, be they horror or not, but sometimes it's like, you're trying too hard to be John Waters, and it's making me enjoy the film less. I think for the most part, this film comes out clean.
Yeah.
I agree. I think you can see the John Waters inspiration, but I don't feel like they were ripping him off. They definitely weren't ripping off the aesthetic.
No.
So I think it stands on its own as part of a continuum of campy drag performing films, the leader of which, the pioneer of which would be John Waters and Divine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I also think that, there's a difference between trying to be camp and be camp just because that's what you achieved. And I think that's what John Waters did. He knew exactly what he was doing, but he also had the talent. And I do feel here with this movie, again, the talent is not always there. So then you have to question, is this just trash or plain trash,
Yeah.
And to be clear, there's a value in both of those things, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think the tricky thing with camp is that, yeah, it's not always clear. Is it trying to do this and succeeding? Is it trying to do this and failing? Is it not trying to do this and just becoming camp? And I think in this case, they're striving for it and they're hitting it at times. And at other times when the film is maybe a little less successful, that's where you're like, oh, they didn't quite nail it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the directors, Brandon Paris Sanchez, he would storyboard scenes out in pre-production. And then, they had a lot of people look at the film in post. But whether I said it on the podcast or before we started recording, but there are 5 editors on this film.
You said it.
Okay. 2 of them, Tyler Jensen and Roman Kimianti. These are actually the queer directors of the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 documentary, Scream, Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. They helped them with a huge portion of editing and assisted with the pacing issues they had kind of early on in the process. But then they also brought on 2 more editors, Philip Gillette and Victoria Dalpe, who I'm assuming is related to Christopher Dalpe, one of the directors / the actor that plays Brian. But they would mentor them through this process, giving them notes on early cuts of the film. But they wound up rearranging so many sequences that the final cut of the film is actually very different than the screenplay they were working with.
Right. And that makes sense, too, because when you're filming it over a year and a half, you're ad-libbing certain things as well. Like, I imagine this film evolved over that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think you can see that in the watching of the film. I didn't know it took them a year and a half to film it until after I watched it the first time. And when I read that, I was like, oh, well, that actually explains a lot, a whole lot, because some scenes, they are so on it. It's such good filmmaking, or the acting is good or whatever. And then other scenes, it's like, wow, they were exhausted when they shot this. They must have been, because it looks a little, it looks like they were exhausted.
Yeah.
I used to work on a lot of low budget films when I was in my 20s, when I got out of film school. And actually, when I was in film school, I worked on a lot of them. So I'm very sympathetic to labors of love like this. And they have to be judged on that level. They cannot be judged the same way you would look at basically any other mainstream film. It's like a hobby film for these people, and you just have to look at it that way. You can't apply stringent criteria to a film like this. You just can't. It's unfair.
I caught myself early on. Like, it was when the cops were bagging the body that was found in the dumpster. And I was like, why are they? And I was like, wait, Trace, stop. Right. It doesn't matter.
This is not a movie you ask a lot of whys about. I feel like, Trace, you and I should also acknowledge the elephant in the room, because this film, to me, draws a lot of comparisons to Killer Unicorn, which is a film that we covered a couple of years ago. Similar passion project, also featuring a lot of non-actors, set in the drag community, that time in Brooklyn. And in hindsight, I wonder if we maybe came down a little too hard on that movie. So I do feel like we've learned some lessons over the last couple of years, especially around low-budget independent films.
When you look at movies, directed by John Waters, I've watched all of them, and you watch the first ones. I mean, they were bad. I mean, we admire his work now and we praise everything because that's what you do. But if you look at it carefully, there are some things that were like, why? You'd be asking the same question, why?
Well, and you're right, because I thought about Killer Unicorn a lot when I was watching this, and I think it was a thing where there was a lot of bad taste in that movie. And when I saw Killer Unicorn, I actually hadn't seen any John Waters. So I'm a late gay to my John Waters history. I actually, it was a pandemic watch for me. So I had a friend that came over and brought Female Trouble. And I was like, cool, I fucking loved this. And I just went through his entire filmography in the span of a month. And it was wonderful. But again, watching it, I was kind of like, oh, fuck. Maybe I was a little hard on this trashy, low-budget, gay, queer horror film that uses a lot of rape in it. But I feel like that was our sticking point with that movie, whereas at least this one doesn't really have that.
That one, and I feel like Death Shop Gorgeous actually manages to at least streamline a narrative. One of my issues with Killer Unicorn, if I'm remembering, was that it kind of lost the plot a little bit, and that maybe is a bit more of a me thing where I like a narrative, I like a story, I like arcs. And that film felt like more vignettes, like we were losing characters constantly. And I feel like Death Drop Gorgeous does a slightly better job of, we talked about how Dwayne sometimes appears and disappears, but overall the narrative is moving forward at a reasonable pace here.
Yeah. So just in terms of, Providence obviously is a city in Rhode Island. This movie was filmed there, and the local community did step up by allowing them to use their spaces. So every space you see in the film is either a local business that was totally down with the film and happy to accommodate them, but any other sets you saw, they either built in their basement, they were in their garage. And again, in these interviews, they keep comparing Providence, like just the feel of it, to Baltimore, which is probably another John Waters reference.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a scene where they're in somebody's house, and I'm like, that's somebody's house. That's one of the director's house.
It's probably been set just lightly, but this also looks like, can we move that chair over to the other side of the table?
Yeah.
Well, and same with the music, because again, I sent you all my cheat sheet. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to list 5 editors. I'm not going to list the 10 composers for this film, because what that is actually, so they say, the whole thing, everything in the movie has a bit of grime to it. It's very DIY, and the art and music scene in Providence is pretty eclectic and crazy, but also very ahead of the pack. So they picked a lot of local artists from Providence to do the music for this film. So, I mean, it's a very...
That explains a lot, actually.
Yes.
and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I just mean the music, some of the music, I was like, this is a little edgier than I would have assumed for a film like this. So actually, that explains a lot.
Well, I'll say, this is, despite the fact that it's a handful of, queer men making this movie, this does feel like the output of the city of Providence, Rhode Island was like, here's us, or at least our queer scene.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the queens in the film are real drag queens in real life. They've either done drag or used to do drag at least. All the names and characters were created except for Janet Fitness, which is the actor Matthew Pitch's real drag name when he did drag. Gloria Hole, who we will talk about a lot in this episode.
Oh yeah.
She is based on a drag queen from Providence named Kitty Litter, who is, of course, in the film, the portrait we keep seeing Gloria Hole look at. But Kitty Litter was a fixture in the community in Providence who ended up moving and thus couldn't do the film because they did originally want her to play this role. When she moved, they had her good friend Peyton St. James play her in the film.
Right. Okay. That's fun.
How interesting. With all this explanation and now I'm loving the movie even more.
Well, that's the thing. And, obviously, when you watch a movie, you should be able to look at it in its own terms. You shouldn't have to know all this history and stuff to, endear you more to the film. But that's what we find covering movies on a podcast. You find all those details and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I have a personal connection with this movie now. And it just, I don't know, it makes me cut it a lot more slack than I would have if I was just, a standard critic writing a movie review.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that they did drag because when we...
It shows.
Yeah, when we finished watching the movie, Tom turned to me and said, I think they've done drag because this is real good drag.
Most of the queens, in fact, all of the queens, I would say, there wasn't a bad drag queen in the bunch. The makeup was really high level. The wigs were high level. And a lot of times when you see actors doing drag who are not drag queens, it's very, very obvious that they're not drag queens. But it was just very obvious that all of those girls knew how to do a tuck. It was just clear.
Yes, and actually that's the number one reason why I was like, oh my God, if we can get Tom and Lorenzo on this episode, it is going to be so informative because I knew that you would have these kinds of insights about okay, tell us about how realistic these queens look and whether they're doing a good job, but also I want comparisons to queens that people are going to know. I want all the tea, so...
Oh, we'll be happy to give it.
Well, and this is really the end of my prediction. But the last thing I'll say is, walking into this movie, when it started, I was like, oh God, this is going to be like a challenge on Drag Race that is stretched to 105 minutes because this movie is 105 minutes long. And I'm happy to report that while there are scenes that really feel like that, for the most part, I think this acquits itself very well and it works more often than it doesn't.
Right, and I think that it's a very queer movie, if I can say that, in the most loving way possible, because you see a lot of those productions throughout queer history. John Waters is a big example of that. And then you have Vegas and Space.
Yeah, we were going to bring up Vegas and Space. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I have heard Michael Verratti and Peaches Christ have talked about it. They love to champion it, and that definitely seems like something that would be up our alley.
Yeah.
It absolutely would. There is a lot of... In fact, I would compare this more to Vegas and Space than I would to any other... to any John Waters film.
Really?
And I think you'll know what I mean when you watch it. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon Prime, or at least it was last year. Or it was when we were writing our book, which was 2 years ago.
But it's the same level of passion and performances and you just go with it because there's so much love. I mean, you can see the entire community represented there and giving their best. And I feel the same way with this movie. There is a story here of a killer, but there's also a story of a community, of a queer community, and the drag queen scene. I mean, it says a lot.
And let's face it, they nailed the gay male social scene. I mean,
oh my God.
Only gay men can get that right.
And we don't talk about it now. We can talk about it when we talk about these characters. Because, I mean, this film received criticism from members of the queer community for, really reinforcing gay male stereotypes. And the directors had thoughts on that, too. So I've got some quotes for whenever we talk about it.
Okay, yeah, because that was the thing that really jumped out to me on this second watch. Because, as I mentioned, I got to watch it last year. So it's been a while, but I remembered a lot about it. And going in, I was like, oh, there's more to this film than I remembered. I initially thought it was just kind of a low-budget slasher set within the queer drag scene. And then watching it the second time, I was like, shit, this movie's making commentary not just about, the way that gay men date, but also the way that we abandon our institutions and our icons the minute that something hot and fresh comes along.
I agree. And there's also a subtle, very, very subtle commentary on racism amongst white gay men.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that they kept calling him Tito or Deshaun. I thought that was actually clever. They didn't really shine a light on it. They just, in passing, these guys would say something and you'd pick up on it.
Well, it's, if you know, you know. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to even the stereotypes, it's one of those things where it's like, I am more forgiving of a queer created film that uses gay stereotypes than straight, and not to say straight people can't write gay characters, but it's like, when I see a straight creator make gay characters in their stereotypes, it's like, maybe you need to meet more gay people.
Right.
But when it's gay, man, I'm like, stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, so I'm cutting them some slack.
I won't get in. When we get into the plot, I'll talk about it. But there was a scene where Lorenzo was like, "Oh, come on, why would he do that?" And I was like, "You didn't do that when you were slutting around. Like, come on."
Oh my God, slutting around. I love it.
We've all been there.
Exactly. Like when the guy went down into the basement, he was like, "Who would do that?" I was like, "Please, don't tell me you didn't do that when you were his age."
A blow and go at 3 a.m., obviously.
Yeah.
My friend sitting next to me at the same time, he literally goes, "Would you walk into a crawl space?" I was like,
If the guy in it was hot, yeah.
Oh my God, that's exactly the conversation we had. I was like, why would he go there? And Tom was like, really?
I can remember. Now, this is really dating us because we're significantly older than you. But I remember, this is going to sound horrible, but when Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested, all of our gay friends were like, yeah, I probably would have gone home with that guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a horrible thing to say. And I remember saying it. I was like, yeah, I got to say, that guy would have probably caught my eye in a bar.
Okay. Tiny tangent. Have y'all seen the 2002 Dahmer movie where Jeremy Renner plays Dahmer?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's actually surprisingly good.
Yes.
Really?
Huh.
It's the most acting I've ever seen Jeremy Renner do, but they obviously portrayed Dahmer as queer, so it's like, seek it out. It's not an amazing movie, but it's better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
Oh, I'll definitely check. One more thing I want to mention, since we're talking about production, I was impressed with the opening credits and the font and all that.
Yes.
They spent some money there.
Yeah. Yeah, they purchased a font for sure.
It was very John Waters. When you think about the movies, it does have that homage to the type of font and, that very pink font. And I liked it.
Yeah.
Like I said, we were impressed in the beginning when we're like, all right, this is going great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a certain level of style right out the top, right?
Gay men.
Well, and you know what, Joe? Because I'm done with production, so we can go into this plot.
All right, so we open with a traditional slasher kind of murder set piece. So we've got an unnamed tweaker, and once again, I'm going to clarify, that is the film's language in the IMDb page, not mine. And he is played by Michael Murphy. He is killed by a screwdriver in the back after doing a bad line of coke in a stranger's car.
Question, though, because on the Pounder app, he's saying, like, do you pee and pee? For me, party and play is meth specifically, but is it drugs in general? No,
it's drugs in general.
No.
Oh, man, I have been telling a lot of people no.
Oh, oh, you silly Mary.
You're missing out. You're missing out on screwdrivers to the back, my friend.
I know, seriously.
Yeah, this kill is fine. It's just a screwdriver kill. I actually thought that, like, okay, I know they don't have the budget for it, but what I was kind of hoping was that he was going to, like, because his nose starts bleeding when he does the line.
Right.
And I was kind of hoping his head was going to explode.
Oh my God.
This one doesn't have that budget.
They would have, yeah, I was just going to say that would have blown the $20,000 budget.
Well, you get a balloon and you fill it with, like, red gore and you just paint a face on it. And then you just pop it.
Right. Trace, how many movies have you made? Remind us again. Gently.
Hey, low budget charm. If you got to replace a head with a balloon, then do it.
I will say the shot that I appreciated the most in this opening set piece, it actually reminded me of the, spoiler alert for Scream 2022, the Kyle Gallner death scene in Scream, where we actually get the victim in front of the car headlights up against the wall. And I was like, oh, that's really pretty. And then, yeah, the gore is good. This isn't the most exciting kill that this movie has, but as an amuse-bouche, it's okay.
I just want to jump in and say that opening scene, my first thought was, oh, the production values here are really, really good. Now, that didn't actually sustain itself, but like that tracking shot down the street, the lighting on that opening, it was all great. It looked really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
There is a shot later in it's when the cops find the body on, like, the water line, and
yes!
it gets, like, this, it's like a drone shot, but I was like, oh my, this is the most expensive shot in the movie.
That's the other one I was going to point. And then there's an overhead shot of Dwayne getting out of his car. And I'm like, all right, well, that's pretty good.
I will say, I know a couple of people who hate how much drones get overused, specifically in horror films nowadays, but I think they are such a boon for low-budget filmmakers because they can inject a certain sense of style as a result.
Yes, all the Instagram queens would agree with you.
The Instagays, yes.
Yes, oh my God, yes.
Okay, so we have our title, and then we are introduced to Dwayne, as Trace mentioned, played by Wayne Gonsalves, and he is newly back in Providence. So I always am a sucker for this kind of, I've been away from town, so I need to get reoriented. Let me bring you to all of the locations and introduce you to all of the characters you will need to know for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So he passes by a silent drag queen, Tragedy, who is played by Complete Destruction and is my absolute favorite part of this movie.
Yes!
Yes.
Serving looks. Like, this is that.
Yeah.
She looked amazing through the whole film, and she was creepy as shit, which is exactly what you needed for that character.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because it's, the character's name is Tragedy. And then I was like, oh, well, who's the actor? Oh, Complete Destruction.
Right.
Of course. They really should have had that in the opening credits, like, and Complete Destruction as Tragedy,
Right.
Featuring Complete Destruction.
Wait, is that a band? Is that a person? Is that a pet?
What it is, no, it needs to be Dark Sky Pictures presents Complete Destruction in Death Drop Gorgeous.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, we have to remember Tragedy is a bit player in this movie, but I mean, the girl is out there turning looks and stealing all of the scenes that she shows up in.
Yep.
Well, I know we're not going to get a sequel to this probably, but man, we could get a really good Thelma and Louise sequel with Tragedy and Gloria Hull.
Oh my God, yes.
I think when you are surrounded by questionable actors or people who are deliberately overacting, a performance like Tragedies or Complete Destructions stands out because she's not overacting. She's not even emoting all that much. So it's almost like she pulls all the light toward her in a scene. You can't help but be looking at her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy, right? Like, have other people go so big, and then you got a couple of other characters who are really not doing much, and that helps them to stand out. Sometimes for best, sometimes for worse.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are in the bar, the Outhouse.
I like
spelled
that.
German style.
I like that too. They should have put umlauts over the A's. That would have been funny.
And this is where Dwayne used to work, and he is back here banging. Oh my God. He is back here begging for his job from owner Tony Two Fingers, who is played by Brandon Paris, one of the writer-directors.
It took me forever. I could not figure out why he was called Two Fingers.
I know.
My husband was like, is it because he sticks two fingers in the hole? And I was like, I don't
That's
think
what
so.
I thought too. And then I realized he was like curling up his fingers to make it look like they were and I cracked up laughing. I was like, that's what I want to see in a movie like this.
But I love that you can read it both ways.
I know. And it's like $20,000 you couldn't get a prosthetic hand.
Why bother? It's funnier.
Because there's a line, though, where the cop goes, whatever you do, don't say shit about his hand. And the next scene you see him, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with his hand?
Mm-hmm.
But later, Gloria calls it like a lobster claw of a hand or something like that. Yeah.
I love that line, too.
So do I.
So Tony Two Fingers, he's one of the over actors in this movie. And most of the time I like it. Sometimes I'm like, as long as he doesn't have too many lines in a scene, then it becomes a bit too much for me. Mm-hmm. But I will say, I laugh every time I see the pup, which is not a dog. It is a real human being played by Ryan Miller, who is in a pup outfit, but acts like a dog and is referred to as a dog the entire movie.
I loved it. I thought it was really funny. I think when it comes to Tony Two Fingers, I agree that you got to let that performance be what it is, but
yes,
he turns the dials to 11 and he never turns them down. Like, there are some times where I'm like, you could have backed off a little bit on that line reading.
Yeah, I think RuPaul would have been like, you didn't give me quite enough range. Like, you started at the 11 and never went anywhere else.
Exactly.
Levels.
He's my least favorite, to be honest with you. Although he is cute and my type, but anyway, that's another story.
Really?
What, you mean with the pillow that's stuffed in his undershirt the entire time? And I want to put this out to listeners because we do have a decent amount of non-queer listeners, and I always, when we do a movie like this, where it's very, very queer, and you're seeing the queer world that we live in, there's some things that I'm like, oh, I wonder what straight people think about this, and I feel like the pup is probably the one that's going to throw a lot of straight people off.
Yeah, I think they might not even understand what it's about.
Exactly. They don't even know what that is. Yeah.
Or I think like visually you can get it, but you're just like, I don't understand.
Right.
Everyone, just go Google pup play, not on your work computer. Please do it on your personal computer, but it's there.
Yeah.
And maybe at the dog park, just so that you really blend in. Okay, so Tony ends up taking pity on Dwayne and giving him Tuesday nights, which is basically the death. Like, you might as well just shoot him in the face because
it's karaoke night.
Yeah.
Dear Lord. As someone who worked in a gay bar, yeah, karaoke night is a slow one.
Really? I didn't know that. Oh. Huh.
Well, it's like if the dance floor is not open and just karaoke on the main stage is going on, yeah, it can be slow.
I wonder if it depends on where you are, though, because Austin, we have some good karaoke at our gay bars in Austin.
Yeah, I think that people would come if they're interested in that sort of thing.
I actually think people would drink more if it was karaoke night just to get up on stage. You know what I mean?
But, I don't... Okay, maybe I'm basing this off of nothing here, but I wonder if it's younger generations, though, because I'm younger than y'all, but I'm still, in my 30s. But, I have met a lot of people who were especially younger people who were oh, I don't like to do karaoke. That's not really my kind of thing. And I was like, really? Because you probably have a bunch of TikTok videos where you're doing it, but, you don't want to do it in front of a live audience? Okay.
Right.
Well, I think for some people, too, the idea of doing karaoke is separate from going to a gay bar, right? Like, the gay bar is for meeting people, it's for drinking, it's for dancing, whereas karaoke now has its own, private rooms, right? You're not going to be subjected to other people's terrible singing.
Yeah. Right, and not only that, and people judging you, because you're so focused on presenting a certain, idea of what you are. And I
gotta say, on the off chance that I ever would do karaoke, I sure as hell wouldn't do it in front of a room full of queens.
Right.
Yeah.
No way.
I would, and I have, but. That being said, I guess, if you're choosing your audience, do you want it to be a bunch of gays? Oh, I don't know.
No, sir.
All right.
Yeah, you got to be careful, too, because if you get a mean-spirited queen who's hosting this, we can talk about the drag bingo, and that's one thing, but drag karaoke might be a very cruel endeavor.
No. I can take drag queen heckling. It is different coming from an audience of gays where they're just vicious. There's a difference between sardonic and vicious.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's easier to get heckled by a drag queen than it is by the hot guy and standing in front of you.
Yes,
right.
Exactly that.
Okay. I think it also has something to do with confidence, which is something I would not have in my singing voice, because imagine this voice singing.
Well, Joe, all you have to do is strip down to your Speedo, and you'll be fine.
All right, moving on.
Oh.
Okay, so we meet Dwayne's femme roommate, Brian, who, as we've mentioned, is played by Christopher Delpy, and I have in my notes that he's dressed as a French Beetlejuice in this opening scene. Brian wears some of the funniest outfits. I think only Gloria Hole wears better weird outfits in this movie.
He's certainly got away with a kimono.
Right. I loved him from the get-go. I thought he was funny, the way he dressed, and he was just that, I can see him as my friend.
And this is a classic example of the acting is not good, but he is fully committed to it, and it makes it really entertaining.
Agree. His entrance, he just comes in. He doesn't even say anything. He waits like 5 seconds, and he just does a pose and just looks at Dwayne.
Right.
And you're like, is he gonna say something? And then he finally does. I also really enjoyed this character. But when talking about queer stereotypes, I think this is probably outside of like the just drag queeniness of it all. This is probably your that's a femme queer stereotype.
No, he is hysterical when he says, "I douche for this."
That is hilarious. And I'm assuming, I guess you guys saw interviews with Christopher Dalby. I mean, he's not all that far off in terms of the way he talks. It's basically, he just turned up the dials on his own style of speaking. So it may be a stereotype, but I think he was just playing a more exaggerated version of himself.
Yeah, and he says, I mean, like, 'cause, again, they're like, we've had critiques from the queer community that's like, you are perpetuating these stereotypes. And Dalpe says, he goes, there is satire in this movie. Right. We are using stereotypes as satire, and that has a poignancy for the film. Being over the top or being overly egregious or being overly mean has a point. LGBT and queer culture has a lot of these archetypes that we've built ourselves that are not necessarily always worth celebrating. We've had some critiques that have accused us of just portraying stereotypes, but we're trying to be subversive towards those stereotypes and say something about these characters. Plus, Brian's supposed to be kind of awful. That's the point.
Right, exactly.
And that's what I really take away, especially on a second watch. Like, the first time, it's hard not to be distracted by how femme and out he is. And I think, let's also acknowledge the fact that stereotypes exist for a reason. I've met a lot of Brians, and because he acts this way, it doesn't mean fucking anything. Brians are great people. Like, I love my femme friends because they're being true to who they fucking are. So it's fine.
I totally agree.
Now... Is Brian a good friend to Dwayne in this movie?
No.
But on that note, I also know Brians that are femme that also aren't good friends, just like Brian.
This is
exactly.
He sounds like someone you want to have around, just for fun, but not necessarily, a real friend.
He's the friend you go to brunch with, but he's not the friend you turn to when someone dumped you.
Yes.
Right, because he's going to be on his phone not paying attention to your story.
Well, no, but it's the friend that will always talk about themselves and like want you to ask them about their life, but they will never unprovoked ask you a question about your life.
That's exactly it.
Right. Yeah. And back to stereotypes. I defend Bryans. I defend the Bryans out there because I think there's a tendency now from the community to embrace other types and try to erase the most common, the ones that we don't think are politically correct or something like that. So I think there's room for all of them.
Yeah, I love my sissy femmes. I don't have any problem with seeing them on screen.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, this movie needs a character like Brian because it's operating at this level, right? Like, Brian fits into this world of camp and satire. Like, I don't know that this movie works if you don't have a character like this.
I agree.
But the thing is this, okay? It just shows how much people want to complain. If you didn't have a character like this in this movie, then the critique would be, well, it's not really that realistic because you don't have a femme gay man in this movie. Where's that representation?
Exactly.
So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they won't use that language and say, well, you don't have funny ones, But that's...
Right. All right, so the pair of temporary roommates end up going out. Well, basically, Brian drags Dwayne out because he has a date, and so they hit the bar. And
you say date like it's in quotation marks.
Well, no, I was gonna see if we wanted to say pounder now or say pounder later. So they go to the bar, and Janet Fitness is doing her show. This is a drag character played by Matthew Pidge, and Brian is in love with Janet Fitness. He thinks that she is the future of drag, and overhearing this, much to her chagrin, is the elderly queen, Gloria Hole, played by Peyton St. James, aka Michael McAdam.
Ugh. Okay, y'all are gonna think I'm really dumb. Gloria Hole makes several appearances in this movie, obviously, but not always in the same outfit, hair, makeup. And so there were literally times where I was like, who is this new character we're talking to now?
I know. A lot of the other queens kept a consistent look throughout the film, but Gloria really did switch up her looks all the way through it.
Well, Gloria is actually our favorite character. I agree.
Oh, she's
you
the
agree,
best.
right?
Absolutely. It wouldn't have been watchable if she wasn't in it.
We will get there because it's the very end of the movie, but I will say that especially in a slasher, a killer monologue, like, you know, the why I did it thing is really crucial to the success of your film. And while I was on the fence for a lot of this film, this killer monologue that we get later pushed me over. I was like, fuck, yes, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Gloria was just hysterical when Dwayne waves at her and she says, "I don't have any cash." I mean, that is hilarious. I mean, it's so wrong, but it's so funny.
I won't lie to you. There's something about St. James, aka McAdam's face, that just feels quintessentially draggy. Like, I spent a lot of time around drag queens, and the ones who have the big mouths are always so expressive, and they can do really funny facial expressions. And it's just something I guess maybe it's a bit personal, but I've always associated this kind of mouth with drag. And this is a really good mouth.
Well, he really knows how to use his mouth too.
Yes.
That sounds like a double entendre, but he does a lot of mouth acting where he is just pursing his lips, or when he grins, he looks like the fucking Joker. He has got the biggest mouth. Yeah. It's actually really off-putting in a way, but it really, really works for the character.
Even the way he looks, I actually got a lot of Pandora Box from this actor.
Yeah.
Hair, makeup, bit older, you know. That's the drag queen I kept linking it to.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect.
And we've said this a lot in our discussions of drag queens over the years. A lot of the best drag queens, let's put RuPaul aside. Right. A lot of the best drag queens are a little scary. There's some, you know what I mean? It's like clowns. You know, there's an innately off-putting, you know, unless you're talking about like straight up beauty queens like RuPaul, but a lot of the, especially bar queens, a lot of bar queens can be a little scary up close. And that really works when you put them in a movie like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it ends up feeling more authentic, right?
Yeah.
And there are some great scenes. I mean, what's supposed to be her house. I mean, I loved her house, like that wallpaper and everything, and all those bright colors. It was just perfect. And there are some scenes where she's just perfect.
Yeah.
You know, the lighting is perfect, and her lines are just divine.
I mean, we will get to plenty of these moments.
Well, let's deal with Brian's unfortunately misogynistic and racist pounder date, who, okay, so IMDb has a couple of weird listings for some of these. So I figured out that the actor is Trad Sanderson, and in the credits on IMDb, he's listed as Ivy League student, but in my notes, I have people referring to him as beige student, and I like mine better. So that's fine. I'm going to go with mine.
Well, this person is a blank Grindr profile personified.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
He's hot, he's boring, he's well-dressed, and he just wants a blowy, and then he's going to abandon you.
Yep.
And he's not into blacks, and he's not into dating girls.
Right.
God.
Yeah.
This is what I mean about them really nailing gay male social life.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the nose, but I'm also like, yeah, but it's true.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's not as though they're saying, oh, well, he's a fucking racist, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're not going on tirades.
No.
He says it, and they remark like, well, that guy's a fucking asshole. And then we move on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps coming up. Like, this film actually does a lot with racism as microaggressions. Maybe that's being a little too gentle with it because they are pretty overt, but it's not hitting us over the head being like, hey, did you understand that was racism? It's like, yeah, they understand that we're going to get it.
There isn't a speech or a lesson after a moment like that. I mean, you kind of understand. It's understood.
Similarly, no one turns to the camera and says, "Oh, we need to treat our elders better." But I mean,
Right.
it's implicit in the story.
Mm-hmm. So after this date goes badly, beige student is drunkenly lured into Dexter's basement for a blow and go at 3 a.m. And I will say one of my favorite shots in this movie is the hand coming through the glory hole.
Yeah.
The jello black glove, the little twist of the wrist. Just to, hey, if you hadn't figured out the killer's going to be a drag queen, that wrist movement alone has got
Exactly.
It's theatrical.
Wait, was there ever a point where y'all didn't think the killer was Gloria Hull?
No, not really. I don't think. I mean, I didn't see it as some big twist. Like, I didn't gasp when it was finally revealed. I was like, well, that makes sense.
I'll confess, I thought it was tragedy for the better part of my first viewing.
Well, it kind of was,
I feel
too.
kind of vindicated at the end.
Yeah.
It could have been any of those bitches. It could have been Janet
Right.
Fitness. I mean, they were all kind of, nasty bitches.
Yes.
And any one of them could have been. And actually, most of the drag queen characters were really well drawn. Like, Tragedy is not Janet Fitness. Janet Fitness is not Gloria Hull. They all have very distinct personalities. So, yeah, I think it was pretty clear right from the get-go that one of the drag queens was the killer because they were spending so much time showing you these characters.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So this is our second murder, and I remember the first time I saw the film, I was disappointed that this death happens here because I felt like it was too good to be early in the film. I've come around on it a lot, but I still think it's the best death in the movie, so it's not every day you get to see a dick get ground up in a meat grinder, but goddamn is it ever good.
Yeah.
Logic again, though. I was like, because when they cut to show the meat getting ground out, I was like, okay, like, his dick wasn't that big.
That's an awful lot of meat. Maybe somebody
he's the
else's
third
dick was
guy.
still in there, yeah.
Yes.
Leftover dick.
This is the fifth racist I put through this meat grinder tonight.
Also, bravo for a glory hole death. I mean,
Right.
I feel like the only time I've seen that in a movie is, honestly, Scary Movie 1 when the Wayans brother gets it, but that what?
Yeah.
But good for them. Love seeing a glory hole.
Oh my
There we
God,
go.
yeah, and it's real. The fear is real. I mean, I remember looking at a glory hole and go like, my thing.
I don't know what's on the other side.
My dick is not gonna go in there. No way.
Stupid me. My dick was in plenty of glory holes back in the day.
Hey, but you know what though? People do that. I mean, I'm sure they did this back then, but people do their makeshift glory holes where they just hang a sheet in front of a partition and they just cut a hole in it.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. There are grinder profiles that are like homemade glory hole. Like that's the name of their profile.
Wow.
Well, this is the scene where Lorenzo was like, who the hell would do that? And I was like, Lorenzo, you don't remember getting messages that were like, I'll be face down on my bed, I'm leaving the door unlocked. Like, come on.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
All the time.
I was going to say, isn't that just the default setting when you're setting up a grinder profile?
That's what we call a
change
first
this
date.
text if you need to. Oh boy. So after this death is done, we do push in through the glory hole so that we can fade into Brian cooking sausages. So, chef's clapped for that. He is wearing a green Golden Girls-esque caftan, if I'm not mistaken. It might be a kimono. He favors kimonos, as many of the characters do.
I'm too femme.
It is impressive, yeah.
I love it.
This is where we get a bit of backstory about Dwayne, his cheating ex, the B&B that they were going to set up. And, I mean, we can quibble with how much character development we really want or need from Dwayne, but I do think that it sets in motion why he ends up beating the shit out of that guy later on.
So, look, we're making fun of Brian's, bad friendness and not listening to his friend when he's, confessing something.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen this movie twice. I could not tell you what Dwayne tells him in this scene about his past.
Is it because you're obsessing over Brian's impeccable outfit?
I don't know. Honestly, I zoned out. I was like, oh, God, this is boring. So I checked out.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, well, in that case, let's move on. So the next day, we do have Tragedy and Go-Go Boy, played by Michael Puppy, discovering the body of our tweaker in the dumpster behind the bar. So this is when we're introduced to Detectives O'Hara, played by Michael J. Ahern, and Detective Barry, played by Sean Murphy. I'm interested to hear what you folks think about these characters, because Trace and I had a conversation offline about what they're meant to be to one another and if the comedy works well enough in their relationship.
Yeah.
I think that maybe it had been the one stereotype in the film that I thought was a little... I wasn't mad at it or anything, but the idea of like two closeted cops who don't realize they're attracted to each other. I mean, I've seen this in a lot of films.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad that they had it. I just was let down that they didn't really do anything with it.
Well, that's where it was. So basically, I didn't pick up on the fact that they were closeted and like secretly in love with each other, because the first line we get is, one of them gets a phone call and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm with my partner." No, my work partner. So I actually just assumed they were both gay, but they just weren't together. And so when you're saying, oh, like, they weren't doing anything with it, it's because, honestly, I wish they would have hammered that home a little bit more. Or maybe I'm just dense. It could be one or the other.
No, I feel the same way. I thought he was gay, but the partner was not. So that's why he had to explain, kind of like excuse for using the language partner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I got.
But that being said, I do think if we're talking about trimming the runtime to get this to 85 minutes, I do think you can cut these two characters out of this movie and then... all their scenes, but then have a throwaway line about like, once like there's 5 bodies, be like, where are the cops?
Right.
And then boom, you have cut out this entire subplot that honestly is one of the weaker elements of the film and does kind of kill some of the pacing.
Well, I mean, I hate to bring logic to a film like this, but by the time you get up to like the 4th or 5th murder, I'm like, why are these two the only people showing up? Like, when there's a murder, there's like 6 cop cars and tape and flashing lights and...
Well, no, not if it's a gay victim. Then they don't care.
Well, that's a good point, but I don't think the film
spelled
it out.
Well, or maybe it's the film saying, no, we're already dealing with one major issue. We've got one minor issue. We don't also want to bring in police responses to queer victimizations and stuff.
I guess so, but again, you cut them out and be like, oh yeah, they don't care about gay people dying. We got to solve the mystery on our own.
That would have been a better take, I think.
Right. Yeah. But then we wouldn't get the amusing recurring joke that they keep trying to put bodies behind the Chinese food restaurant, but then it goes under because they keep finding bodies behind the Chinese food restaurant.
What is it? The poo-poo palace?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I know. The first time they mentioned Chinese restaurant, I was like, "Oh my god, where are they going now with this?"
There's that one like. Oh, sorry, we're not there yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's definitely nowhere tasteful. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to poll the crowd. What instrument is tragedy playing on stage when we cut back to the club? Because I wrote in my notes, it's somewhere between a keyboard and a xylophone.
It's a theremin.
There you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Okay.
I love theremins. I just happen to know that. But yeah, I love theremin music. And I thought it was actually a really great touch to have that. Because it's weird and it's a horror film classic. I mean, every horror, like going back 60, 70 years, horror films have been using that. So
Right.
Yeah, as soon as my husband was like, "Oh, it's a theremin," I couldn't remember the fucking word. So thank you for that.
You're quite welcome.
So Gloria Hole is here. She is bemoaning the state of this empty club. This is also where she's misidentifying his name a million times, even though he corrects her and gives her the proper one every single time. She then begins to perform a slow lip sync, but then just gives up halfway through so that she can go and complain to Tony. And this is where he finally agrees to give her Audrey Hepburn's
Heartburn.
Thank you. And this is where he finally agrees to give her Audrey Heartburn's slot at the forthcoming Mask for Mask ball.
While, I repeat, doing very large, chunky lines of coke, not on his table, but on a tiny little book.
I know. I just want to say, Gloria's lip sync, I actually loved the way that was shot. The single spotlight on her, and then the camera would move around and behind her, and it just gets to one of those. This is when I realized that these were real drag queens and not actors portraying drag queens, because it really gets to that idea that there's an innate sense of tragedy in certain styles of drag performing. There's this sort of melodramatic sense of tragedy, like torch singing drag, that sort of thing. And that scene really, really nails it. If you have ever been in a bar with some tragic queen up there and no one's paying attention to her, that's what that moment is exactly like.
Right.
Also, her costume was fucking amazing. Those earrings, the dress, she looked fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of those things that really hammers it home, right? She spent all this time, she looks so good, and then there's nobody fucking here to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things in our book that we tried to get across is that, and we kept mentioning it again and again, is that, there's a lot of world famous drag queens out there. There's a lot of drag queens that changed the world with their work. But the vast majority of drag queens are local queens who did all their work on tiny little stages, and the only people who ever knew them were the people in their community. And I mean, that is the heart of drag right there. They are the ones that keep the art alive.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is. I don't know if it's in the middle of the movie or in the climax, but there's that line where it's like, you young people, like, you forget about the people that paved the way, the people that sacrificed everything to get where we are, and that really ties in today. I mean, again, out of the world of drag, but like, when you have Gen Z, I'm not going to specify. I'm sorry, anyone who doesn't know queer history, like, say what Stonewall is,
Right.
Dear Lord. Is that our baseline? Like, people who don't know Stonewall? I'm like, let's reach a little higher. Let's get a few activists in there as well.
Yeah.
This is where we do get the delightful line. So Tony throws what I gather to be under $10 in singles at her and encourages her to get herself a new wig because that one looks like a goddamn cum rag. Their exchanges, basically Janet gets a lot of zingers and Tony and Gloria get a lot of zingers at each other, and they cut.
Okay, so you've mentioned the cum rag 2 or 3 times. Do you just like the phrase cum rag?
I think it's funny. And also, it's about a wig, so I'm just like...
Right, the idea of a wig as a cum rag is hilarious.
Yeah, because wigs are not cheap. Like, you would never use a wig as a cum rag.
They're not absorbent either.
No.
It's hair gel. It's hair gel.
Oh, God. This is not something about Mary. So the next day, everything is going bad for everyone. Ryan learns that he shouldn't meet his idol because Janet dresses him down at the arcade very publicly. And then at Drag Bingo, Gloria has a public meltdown as she looks at the... I had a little difficulty placing exactly where the bingo hall is. Is it attached to her house? Is it out of her house?
I have no idea.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was just, am I not keeping track of the geography, but...
I kind of thought it was some sort of church basement or something, especially because they bring a baby Jesus into it at the climax. Like, why would there be a baby Jesus there? So I thought it looks like some sort of church basement or that sort of thing.
Or whatever was available at Providence that day.
Yes, exactly. I also do love the fact that, because we have a nativity scene at the climax of this movie, let's call it Christmas horror.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do we have any thoughts about Gloria's outfit, the kind of pink chiffon?
I think she looks fantastic. What I love about this scene is that she does such a good job showing that, she's an old queen, and when she grabs a bowl and she can't read it, like I think just a little touch like that, I just think it's hilarious.
And I love her outfit here. She's got like the giant, I think it's a gardenia or something in her next on her turban, and it was such a great touch.
I will say, if folks have the opportunity to go and do a drag bingo, it's often really fucking funny. Like, it's just a different way of interacting with drag, and I quite enjoy it.
They are really funny. I agree.
So, drag bingo, gay bar karaoke. Let's add it to the list.
There we go. Let's do it all, folks. So later on, we see Dwayne and Brian. They're walking down the street. Brian is, of course, wearing a morning hat because of what Janet has done to him.
This kills
Is this a joke
me.
that works for you?
This is the joke that got... He's like, I'm in mourning, and then it just... It really worked for me, and just imagining it is killing me right now.
No, and it works, and I've seen queens do that. If you have friends like in big cities like New York or LA, I mean, they'll do that. They'll go over the top just to show attention. I mean, just so that you pay attention to whatever they're doing.
Just to return to that whole sissy femme thing and whether it's a stereotype, I actually do appreciate that there is sort of a continuum of masculine to feminine on in this whole film. There are, these quote straight acting guys or the mask for mask guys. And then there's Dwayne, who sort of sits in the middle, and then there's Brian, and then you have all these drag queens. So it's like this sort of rainbow of types of gay men out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we cut back to the bar as the queens are getting ready, and this is where we actually get to meet Audrey Hepburn.
Heartburn.
Damn it. How many times am I going to do this? Audrey Hepburn, and she is played by Paul Bond, and she and Janet clearly do not like each other all that much. This is when Audrey learns that Tony has given her spot in the ball to Gloria. One thing I did think was interesting, and again, you could kind of argue that it might mess with pacing or add to the runtime, but we do get a lot of actual footage of bar scenes. You can tell because the film stock is not quite as good.
It's B-roll. It looks like B-roll.
It's B-roll, exactly. No one is dancing in time to the music that's playing on the soundtrack.
It's always
Everyone is dancing to some completely different song.
But I will say I really ended up appreciating these because it gives you a sense of realism in an otherwise like a very big, broad film. I don't know, it makes me yearn a bit for the kind of community that we don't always get nowadays as we increasingly lose spaces, but also just we haven't gotten to really dance and be together for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
That is very true. And you see them putting makeup and talking and bitching and moaning about things like, that's real. I mean, that shit is real.
Not only that, but the club scenes expand the film a little bit because otherwise it's all scenes in apartments, scenes on little sets and that sort of thing. And when you put them in a real club, it's like, oh, okay, this is all happening in a real world.
Right.
Well, and I feel like there's to a certain subset of the gay community where it's like, the club scene has a sort of stigma around it for being, a certain way, and it maybe is that way. But, whenever I hear people say that, I'm like, yeah, but I remember turning 18 and going to my first gay bar in Houston, Texas,
God,
and it was
magic.
It was just like a whole world was over. So no matter, I know the club scene has its issues, but like I will always be grateful for it.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I don't know what it's like for Gen Z or whatever, but we're Gen X, completely Gen X. And for my generation, the baby boomers before us, and I would assume for millennials as well.
Yeah.
That is a seminal part of your introduction into the queer community. We all have the option of walking away from it at some point, but most of us had to walk through those doors early on in our post-coming out period.
Yeah,
right.
It's not even necessarily. I mean, I met people my age who were like, "Oh God, like just a bunch of fucking sluts doing drugs in the club." And I'm like, I mean, like there are people that do that, but again, it was a way for them to make them feel better about themselves because they're like, I don't do that, and I'm better than that. And again, replace club scene with anything, and that's pretty much any member of the gay community. We want to feel better than other gay men,
right? And I'm glad that they actually got a bar, right, to shoot the movie in. Like it's called Dark Lady in Providence, I believe. Anyway, it's nice because you look at it and you can see. I mean, it does look real. It looks like a bar.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That is a proper gay bar.
Exactly. And again, going back to you can tell that gay men made this film. They actually lightly touch on the idea that there is a certain hierarchy. There are your shot boys, there are your go-go boys, there's the manager, there's the bartender, there's the bouncer. And they actually lightly touch on all of those like minor social archetypes that are in the gay male social scene.
Yeah, in the same way that they're doing it with the drag hierarchy, right? Like if you're working the Tuesday karaoke night, you are not working that Saturday night unless it's an opening slot.
Right.
Joe, why don't you tell them what your role in the hierarchy was when you worked at a gay bar?
I was the backup coat check boy.
Oh.
So I got to run the coats. I didn't interact with guests. That was my boyfriend's job at the time. So he would schmooze because he was more outgoing and social, and I would run the coats into the kitchen, which is the overflow where we put everything.
So everybody's coat smelled like food at the end of the night?
I was going to say, so we only burnt a couple of coats over the kitchen. But also, let me tell you how many times I got secondhand high from people not closing their fucking poppers, and I would just get absolutely wrecked over the course of the night because it would be seeping out.
Oh my God.
Have y'all ever spilled poppers like on a mattress?
No.
Oh.
Can you ever get it out?
I don't know, but I will tell you that night your room will smell like poppers, and you will not be able to sleep in it.
Jesus. Now, these are like stories from the old gay times. Like, let me crack open my book that's been chiseled instead of written in. Okay. Fun times. So after the show, Audrey has her face bashed in the dressing room by a killer who is dressed in all black and wearing a Daft Punk reflective mask.
Which reminded me of the fencing mask from Urban Legend's Final Cut.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was on Complete Destruction's Instagram page, and there's shots of her on stage, and she's wearing that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, she's wearing that reflective, as you said, the Daft Punk mask.
Yeah, I wish that this costume had been a little bit more extravagant. I understand that they were trying to underplay it because they want to create a sense of who could be under the mask, but I guess I wish in a drag queen horror film that this had been more over the top.
Well, for me, it was because Audrey Hepburn, she's like, "Oh, that's you," and I was like, "You thought that the bitch, the Janet Fittis, who was just standing next to you not 2 minutes ago, got out of her outfit, got out of her wig, and then got this getup on." Which I guess really in theory maybe is possible. I mean, we can all do it. Drag queens can do a quick change.
I was going to say, yeah, like she just goes behind a curtain, whips it off, puts it on, good to go.
But I mean, you guys are aficionados way more than we are. I mean, isn't that sort of, don't slasher films always have dumb victims in them making dumb choices?
Oh, yeah.
And like completely implausible, like, hey, didn't you just go around the corner and now you're murdering me? Yes.
Right.
I mean, and I'm not critiquing it because especially in a horror comedy, if you're doing a horror comedy, like once you insert that comedy into it, it's going to make it easier to forgive any, I mean, again, logic, stupid decisions, whatever. And obviously this movie is dumb as a stump and it knows it is. So like, none of that matters.
I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but they even call attention to it where Brian at one point says, "How does an old bitch like you move so fast?" or something like that. Which I thought was hilarious.
That was great.
and if you know drag, if you know the drag world, I mean, it takes like hours, like to paint their face. So there's no way you kill someone here and the next day. I mean, in a few minutes, you're like, all dressed up and makeup and all.
But couldn't that have been? I mean. Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Couldn't that have been the accomplice? There were two of them.
Oh, tragedy. It could have been tragedy, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I actually had the impression that any time there was a black-gloved killer, that was tragedy.
I kind of thought so, too.
Because whenever they reveal her at the end, like when she's holding the newspaper up, she's wearing those black gloves.
Right.
Yeah. But and clearly she was posting it on her Instagram.
Right.
Wow. See, now I have to watch it a second time.
There we go. So after dealing with Gloria's racist microaggressions on the street, we get to see Dwayne modeling his shot boy outfit from the ball, and I think he actually looks really fun.
No, I think it's a cute look.
I like the commentary when he's like, I cannot believe I have to wear this. And then Brian's just like, well, you're going to get a lot of good tips, though. And I like that we comment on the, I mean, it's not a serious commentary, but it's just a note of like, look, like we can, oh God, what's the word? Objectify these men too, because that's what we do to shop boys.
Right. Well, I do think it's very funny that Brian says this as he is wearing a turtleneck and a towel as a
Thank you. Thank you. I actually paused it and I turned to Lorenzo and I was like, why is he wearing a turtleneck, but he's got a towel on his head like he just got out of the shower?
Maybe he just did his hair,
There's not a lot of hair there.
It's true. I mean, I love it. Brian is a fashion icon for the ages. His outfits make no sense to me, and I applaud that.
It's like hippie chic.
Yes. Yeah, and he's funny. I love Brian. He's one of my favorite characters.
He's probably the type of guy that would just wrap a turban on his head for the hell of it, just whether it goes with his outfit or not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, he's a drag queen in training. He just doesn't even seem to know it yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are up to the ball, and it's interesting. You mentioned earlier that you thought a lot of the wigs were really good, and I find Janet's wig in these scenes absolutely hideous, but I wonder, is it by design and that's why, or do you actually think this is a good perm?
No, I think it's by design.
I think it's by design because you can see her roots too. It's one of those wigs where it's got dark roots and blonde tips, and I think it's deliberately supposed to be tacky. She's also wearing like a rabbit fur jacket in one where she's got that way. So
and the red heels.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those heels were hideous. But I think it went. I mean, that was her look. I think she's supposed to be a little tacky in that outfit.
I mean, she is a fitness drag queen. Like that is her shtick. So questionable taste all around.
It took me. I was halfway through the movie before I got the pun. I did not I mean...
You think, yeah.
Planet Fitness. I didn't even get it until halfway through the movie.
Yeah. No, so there is one queen that I was like, I don't understand the pun with this name.
Yeah, she's the MC.
Rosebud Seance? I don't get it.
Yes. Okay, so I messaged Joe and both of us were like, I know, is it Chianti? Like, what are we doing here? So I just Googled Cianci, like just that. And the former mayor of Providence, Rhode Island is Buddy Cianci.
There you go. Because she kept calling herself the mayor. She kept saying, I'm the mayor of this bar. Yeah.
Oh my God, I never even caught that.
So this is an in-joke if you live in Providence, Rhode Island.
Wow. A deep cut for the Providence citizens who supported this movie.
Now, see, that's a totally John Waters move. Because he had all these Baltimore in-jokes in his movies.
So Janet is in Tony's office complaining about Chekhov's floorboards and just the general state of how this club is shit now. And meanwhile, we've got Gloria then attacking her. And this is really the first interaction that we get to see between Gloria and Janet. And I love that this is the old guard schooling the kind of young whippersnapper. And this is where Gloria says the line, every perfectly bleached asshole expires.
Oh, yeah.
But then she makes this fatal mistake, right? Where she tries to change her drag to better suit the youth of today. So she comes out on stage in this pink wig, her yellow boots, her neon catsuit, and she lip syncs to I have to assume, original song called #I Swallow.
This felt like a song she wrote.
I love that she has her own boombox.
I know. It's funny because, silly me, I thought she was going to nail it. I thought maybe it's just me rooting for her, but I was like, oh, she's going to get it. And I was like, oh, no, she won.
The outfit's so good, though. I love this, these patterns on her.
The thing is, that is one scene where I'm like, I don't know if I buy this, because I feel like if I was at a bar for drag night and that walked out, I think the bar would go nuts. I think they would laugh hysterically. I don't think they'd be throwing glasses at her. I think they'd be cheering her on.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
People love a bad drag act.
Right. That's what I mean. I thought she nailed it, because it was kind of like, well, maybe she's just mocking herself, you know?
Well, but that's the thing, though. You can be good, you can be bad. You just can't be boring. And none of this was boring.
No, I thought it was hilarious. Unintentionally, but I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think within the world of the film, we're supposed to look at her as this tragic has-been, and particularly in comparison to someone like Janet. But for folks like us who appreciate a variety of different styles of drag, I was like, oh my God, this would be amazing. I would love to see this.
Yes, the queens would be laughing their asses off.
And to be fair, Dwayne actually liked it.
Yes.
Dwayne is the only one who's like laughing through it, and he went backstage to compliment her afterwards, so...
Yeah, well, and that's when you know that Dwayne is just too good for this world. He does not fit in with the denizens of Providence, because, I mean, she just tells him to get the fuck out immediately, and he looks hurt. I'm like, Dwayne, stop expecting niceties from these people.
Exactly.
And once again, Gloria Hole, it's fantastic. You know, it's just he's great. The actor is really good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to quibble with some of the acting in other roles of this film, at least you can always count on this performance to carry you through.
Yeah, she elevates the film. She really, really does. And she does something that nobody else in the film is truly able to do, because they're not really actors, is that she gives her character an inner life.
Right.
You know there's wheels turning in that head. You know what, even if you don't know what she's thinking in a scene, you can tell she's thinking. And non-actors can't pull that off. If they're not speaking a line, they're just kind of standing around waiting for their next line. And that wasn't true of her at all. She acted the fuck out of this role, and she never let it down through the entire, 1 hour and 40-minute runtime.
Okay, so we're up to that great drone shot as the beige student's body is discovered on the beach. I had to assume that this was a Twin Peaks reference, right?
I think so. Oh, right, because then they reveal the dick, and it's supposed to be like Laura Palmer's. Actually,
you're right.
Okay, there was an interview I read, and they did mention Twin Peaks as a reference. So I don't think it was specifically to that scene, but because of that, I think you're right, Joe. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I see a body in plastic on a beach, I'm always like, she's dead.
Wrapped in plastic.
And it makes sense that this is the most expensive looking shot in the movie, as we get this zoom in from the water on the drone.
Yeah, it was their David Lynch moment.
I know.
Right.
It's so funny that we all had the same thought. Oh my God, this is a great scene.
Well, because the video quality even looks better.
Looks so expensive.
That's the thing. Every video quality is always better in daylight. So most of the film is at night. So whenever they have these daylight scenes, you're like, wow, that looks really great.
Yeah. So we have our two detectives on the scene, and then as they're leaving, they actually get a call that another body, which is Audrey's, has been discovered. So this prompts O'Hara to remark that they are looking for a serial fag-killing vampire with a taste for blood, which is not a line I was expecting to get in this movie.
We're about to get pumped and dumped in a minute.
Oh my God.
And again, jumping ahead, they also made a tranny reference later on in the film. And I was like,
that one really threw me off because I was like, there's no way we're needing to be saying that in 2021.
My thought during that moment was, these guys are lucky this film wasn't more popular because that would have been controversial.
Yes.
Well, if people had found out about it, that they would have gotten in trouble for that.
Well, and I think that's something, I'll limit it to gay men, right? Where it's like, sometimes we feel like, and we, the general we, have the right to say anything because we have been slighted and marginalized. So it's like, yeah, we can say this, work.
Right.
And we can't.
No.
Sometimes we have to remember that we can't say all those things.
Yeah.
Right. You have to adjust, and I'm surprised they didn't for this movie.
It doesn't have the same kind of satirical ring that all of the other cutting remarks in this film do. Like, to me, that is too much of a loaded term in this day and age. Like, we need to retire that and maybe wait for the trans community to appropriate it if they want to bring it back.
I agree. I mean, going back to the discussion about racism and microaggressions, they were able to do that without anybody slinging around a slur.
Right.
Yeah. So they could have workshopped that line a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, Joe, the other movie that we haven't covered on the podcast, but we did write about it, was the film Ticked Off Trannies with Knives, which actually co-stars Willem Belly.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when that premiered at the festival, like, I mean, there were trans people in the audience that, like, during the director Q&A was like, not only, I mean, granted, I like the movie a lot. It's like very much much like this, but like more exploitative.
Way more exploitative, yeah.
Yeah, because it's about, like, it's like a revenge film with like someone killing a bunch of trans, actually, they're trans characters, but drag queens playing them. So again, that's murky in and of itself.
Yeah, that's dicey.
But it's very much not only did you have this word in this movie a lot, you put it in the title of your movie.
Yeah.
It's literally a movie that you could not make nowadays.
No, I would recommend people. I do think it's just trashy fun, but your mileage may vary.
Yeah. My take is that, because we've been writing about drag queens for 13, 14 years now, and we've had to say this a lot to people who watch Drag Race, is that you have to remember that drag is first and foremost a subversive art form. And there are a lot of people in that art form who feel it's their job to be, offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's such a thin line because I'm not giving them a pass, but I also feel like you always have to remind that, okay, drag is supposed to piss people off or scare people or make them uncomfortable. It's not all RuPaul. It's not all these nice, clean Instagram drag queens. A lot of times it's dirty, it's messy, and some of the most famous drag queens of all time were highly, highly offensive in their acts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're having this conversation a lot. I mean, we on social media and everywhere. I mean, we have the stand-up comedies now. We're questioning them, and we're talking about them. What's right or what's wrong. In terms of comedy in general. So, yeah, it is a conversation to have, and and I'm glad we're having it, and we just adjust as we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a brief touch-in between the detectives and Tony, and this is, where we hear that the Chinese restaurant has gone under, but there's also some commentary here about how the world has changed, and Tony doesn't acknowledge that, right? Like, we've heard it in how he treats his patrons and his club, but here he also just thinks he can sweep literal dead bodies under rugs.
Oh, the Oriental rug. It has to be an Oriental rug.
I know. I cringed at that line.
Oh God, that word. It's just like, oh, grandma, is that you?
Yeah.
Also, did he need a fake belly to be an asshole? I didn't.
I guess the fake belly comes in at his death scene. I mean,
yes.
I think that's why he needed it, basically.
It's a cheap fat suit that pays off for the one gag at the end. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
I mean, he's very rarely not sitting behind his desk, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just when you see it, then you can't stop seeing it.
No, it looks like a pillow.
Yes. So Tony basically says, well, why the fuck did I pay you guys so much if you're not going to get any of this done? So we see them going through videotape surveillance in between manly back rubs. And this is where Dwayne is seen confronting beige student during the altercation a couple of nights before. So they go, oh, okay, well, this guy seems shady, which again, we're talking racism by police officers.
Right.
And yes, this is where we get to see the go-go boy getting lured to his death under the pretense of a massage. And I love this because this could have been a cutscene from a gay porn.
It is definitely, I think we talked about this when we covered that porno, Joe, but massage porn is one of my go-tos, and I really enjoyed this scene, up until the murder, but I really enjoyed the butt shot we get of this actor.
Again, I think when you have this and you have like the glory hole scene, this is when you know that gay men did this movie, because as you noted, that it's a whole subset of porn based around massage. Yes. There's a whole subset of porn based around glory holes. I don't want to make too broad a statement here, but happy ending massages and glory holes are really, really a seminal part of gay male sexuality. Like every gay man I know has either partaken or understands what the rules are in those situations. It's just this is when I appreciate that the film was made by gay men, because they do get the culture. They're coming straight out of it. No pun intended.
And I also love just the condemnation, condemnation judgment / sly wink wink nudge nudge at how stupid this go-go boy is, how stupid beige student is, because you can see that they're walking into a murder set piece. Like, hey, when you look down through the massage table and you see
there's a bucket.
Yeah. Like, what do you think that's there for?
That's not for your cum, buddy.
I know. It's like when I hear those stories, about Grindr, and the guy gets there, and that's like there's plastic everywhere, like lining everywhere.
God,
like,
terrifying.
right. Oh yeah, you walk away, run.
See, that's probably water sports, though. I imagine that like people who really enjoy that, they just have plastic liners everywhere.
Yeah,
plastic sheets.
Yep.
Wow.
Which don't look comfortable at all.
They're not.
Oh my God, Trace. Just I'm sure we will hear from someone who is interested in water sports who is happy to educate you.
Oh, yes.
I just never touched one. You know what?
It sounds like you need to experiment a little bit.
I'll experiment with some water sports.
But I don't know. I mean, if you have to put all those liners out, like, what's the point? Where's the fun then of doing it? I don't know.
The only time I've ever seen like plastic or rubber sheets is when there's a full-blown orgy going on.
Like there's so much.
I am giving away so much about my sexual history on this podcast. I gotta say, we're pretty wholesome gays, the two of us. Like, that's our image. So if any of our readers or listeners tune in, they are gonna be shocked.
They'll be horrified.
They're gonna be like, wait, these two men who pose for pretty pictures on Instagram and talk about wholesome like runway looks are secretly real people.
They're gonna be like, they have cat pictures on Instagram.
One day a week, just slip in a little orgy picture from back in the day. You're like, oh, how did that get in there?
Oh, I didn't take any pictures.
But anyway, well, thank God we didn't have social media back then. Anyway,
amen.
Right, yeah. All right, so this kid is dead. As much as I enjoyed this scene, I think it's fun. It's a little bit playful. I do think you could probably lose this and not really lose much to the overall plot as well.
Yes, but I do think that the practical effects on the throat wound look really good.
I agree.
Yeah.
If there's such a thing as an enjoyable murder, I thought that was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I agree.
I also do like how the massage continues so that we can really get all the blood out of the body.
I mean, again, logic question. If you're going to get a massage and you feel gloved hands rubbing on your back.
God, yes.
That should be a red flag right there.
I mean, we're in a pandemic. Who knows what people are doing to protect themselves in essential services. Okay, so we get a series of interviews as the police detectives basically talk to everyone who's still alive, and this is when we do get Gloria referring to Tony's hand as the Lobster Claw Massacre.
Gloria's outfit in that scene is fucking amazing. That hat, the polka dot hat and the polka dot gloves.
And I just love because it has hearts or dots. Yeah, dots. Yeah, it's just pretty and fabulous and very innocent.
But I honestly, that was the scene where I was like, oh, okay, she's the killer.
Right.
That was the scene for me.
Well, and, they were about to reveal her as the killer 40 minutes before the movie ends.
I know.
Which, yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I was like, they're going to do it now? I mean, we still have like 40 minutes to go.
Well, this climax is lengthy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, we have to make commentary on the brides, the bachelorette parties that come into gay bars.
Again, I'm going to return to my point. This is what happens when gay men tell stories about gay male socialites. Because we all know what that means. We all know what that's like. And we've all seen it. And I love that the girls were all really, really sloppy drunk and obnoxious.
To the point that they get sprayed with blood and don't even care.
I know.
But there's a shot, though, where it's like that kind of that B-roll look where they're all just at the bar and, like, Dwayne's trying to take one of their orders. But, like, all of them are doing the watermelon cantaloupe where they're not clearly talking to each other. They're just mouthing things and moving their arms around to look like they're having a conversation.
Right.
Yes, but we're not quite there yet because I do want to talk about these news reports that we get.
Yes!
Because the residents of Providence are really upset and scared, you guys.
The body count of gay men continues to rise in Providence.
This is another scene where I paused it and I turned to Lorenzo and I said, they couldn't brush this bitch's hair before they started rolling the camera?
No.
I shouldn't say bitch, that's mean, but... She does not look like a reporter. I mean, she does not look remotely like a journalist to me. That girl needs a major hairspray job on her hair and a lot more makeup than that.
They plucked her off the street and said, can you please read this cue card? That is exactly what happened.
Basically,
God,
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, my favorite was like I'm imagining local Providence Instagay who talks about how we didn't get gay marriage so that we could just be killed.
This is a moment though where the editing actually works because it does. He says, it's that we did not just get marriage so we could get killed, whatever. And then it holds a beat, but he makes he cocks his head a little bit like a dog, and that extra beat that it holds works so well and just cements that punchline.
Yeah, it was a really funny scene. It was a funny line.
And then we get that mother. My sons, I will starve myself until I have answers, and I will not stop using my blog.
She was a pure John Waters character. She felt like she had just come in from a John Waters film to do her bit.
Well, I like too that this is another drag performance, but it's being played for straight. Like this is a female actress, and it's not. Right. And I guess we haven't addressed it, but one of the amusing things I enjoy about this movie is how if you do drag, you're in drag all the time.
All the time.
That is not how any drag queen lives.
My God, I can't imagine how much your face would break out if you wore that much makeup all the time.
Gloria in her kitchen in full drag, cutting a cantaloupe. That is hilarious.
I died.
But the mother was perfect. Back to the mother. She was funny. She was very funny.
Just her blog.
Oh my God, I know.
Until justice is served.
So we get some crosscut action as we see Dwayne hooking up with and then beating up a guy who cheats on him immediately after a blowjob. That's
why you don't do cocaine, children.
Okay. Thanks for the PSA. And we also have Brian inadvertently getting himself murdered because he goes to Gloria's house to ask her some very intrusive questions, and she just gets tired of him, so she stabs him. Okay,
but this scene, this is when Gloria Hull is giving the best faces, right? Because...
I agree.
When he walks out and he's wearing the wig, he's the lips. You can be my drag mother, and then it cuts to her. Ugh, I can be one of those singing queens.
Listen, I was ready to kill him. So I don't blame her at all.
Well, he's the definition of what she's ranting about at the end, right? It's every gay man who just slaps on a wig and thinks you can be a drag queen as though there is nothing to the artistry. And I mean, that's why I love Brian, because he's such a ridiculous character. He wouldn't even realize that he's offending her. And I just can't imagine her having put in decades of work to have this dude show up at your house, slap on a wig, and be like, I'll be your drag daughter.
Right,
exactly.
That just illustrates how clueless and self-absorbed Brian actually is.
And then we think that this is the end of him because he's been stabbed, but it turns out he's actually snuck through the basement, which is where we saw the earlier dick grinder murder. And he gets single white femaled, so he gets a high heel right in the eye.
Right in the eye.
I think the reveal of him coming out of the basement and showing it that it was the same doors that the guy went in for his blowjob was, it was, I mean, obviously we knew at this point that Gloria was the killer, but it was a nice sort of circular moment. It took you back and it sort of tied a bow on the whole thing.
So I guess this really was a homemade glory hole then, because she's either got it in the bottom of the bingo hall or in her house.
Yeah.
She has a bingo hall wing of her apartment.
I mean, maybe land is really cheap in Providence, and you can just buy a house with a bingo hall adjoining it.
I mean, Rhode Island.
I have to admit, she had an impressive house for a failing drag queen. I was like, well, that's pretty nice. Same thing with Brian's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Brian had this gorgeous kitchen. I was like, there's no way that bitch can afford that kitchen.
No. You know, maybe because Rhode Island is a tiny state, so maybe everything's cheaper there.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I do. I have to say, I do love her house. The wallpaper,
it's all it's very chintzy, and it was perfect for her.
Yes.
So we return to the bar, and it is exceedingly empty. And Tony kind of finally realizes, oh, everything people have been telling me is true. This bar is failing. And he ends up getting really angry at his pup. So he kicks the pup out, and Gloria just immediately runs it over. Okay. And I have to give a shout out to the fact that we hear a dog whimper sound effect when she hits him.
That was such a great touch.
That's so... yes, that sealed the deal. And then didn't she get out and she just goes, play dead?
So
I have to think they were laughing their asses off in post when they put that sound in. They must have thought that. Yeah, I can't imagine that they weren't.
Yeah, it's so inspired. So this is actually the first time that we see Gloria out of drag, and we see her as she goes to soak in a bathtub full of blood. And I'll confess, I wish something different had been done in the edit here, because I didn't know if this was her as a younger drag queen and it was a flashback, or if she was fantasizing. It took me the second time around to realize she's fantasizing.
So, wait. So this didn't actually happen?
I think this is what she's imagining will happen after she emerges from her
Okay,
bath.
Wait.
But
I'm sorry.
There's a different actor playing Gloria.
It is, yeah. It's played by Johnny Sudeikis.
I just took it as she actually did get younger. I took it literally. Oh, okay.
No, but because her makeup before this scene makes her look older. When we see her in her final climax outfit, she looks, her makeup at least makes her look noticeably younger.
Yeah, so it's not the same actor. This is played by a different actor, but this sequence in particular, she doesn't go to the drag bar and perform this number. This is all in her head.
Holy shit, I did not get that.
I didn't get that
because we see her coated in blood when the two detectives come down into the basement and she gets rid of them with the sledgehammer.
Oh.
That... Wait, okay. That makes sense, though, because I was like, wait, how is she doing this performance at the club? And then she's all of a sudden at Tony's house knocking him out, in the next scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. Woo, boy. Well, nevertheless, we get a Countess Elizabeth Bathory reference in this movie, and it's bathing in the blood of twinks.
Mm-hmm.
That is one criticism I'll make of the I guess the writing or maybe the casting is most of her kills were not twinks.
Right.
I think thematically it would have made more sense if she only killed twinks for their blood like that, because she killed a lot of guys that were in their 30s and even older. So I and she kept referring to people as twinks. I'm like, well, that's not what I would call a twink. Yeah, exactly.
She's got the one go-go boy, but yeah.
That's the only character, and the tweaker in the beginning. Those are the only two that actually I would classify as a twink, but nobody else in the film is.
Would y'all not classify the massage guy? I guess maybe he's more of a cub. Right?
Well, that's a go-go boy.
Oh, go-go boy. I'm sorry.
But it's true. When she's looking for the last victim, she says, just another twink or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they're all twins?
Just I think thematically it would have made sense if all of her kills were young guys.
Well, maybe the idea, though, is that she's so old that everyone younger than her is a twink.
Fair.
God. Either that or they had limited options over a year and a half of filmmaking, and these were the twinks they could get.
Yeah, I think that's probably it.
Or maybe 3 people writing the script.
Right. Yeah.
With 5 editors.
Right.
Yes.
So this is the moment where we do get to see this rowdy hen party, and we see a rejuvenated Gloria arrive to literally stab Janet in the back through the floorboards. So that's why it's Chekhov's floorboards. And
but the fact that we do get like a literal death drop, I mean, you would have felt cheated without it, right?
Yeah.
And in a movie with this name.
It was another one of those really clever murders. It was just really well staged, and you could see it coming from a mile away. And when it happened, it was, weirdly satisfying.
And it felt very Carrie-y with him like under the floorboards.
I thought that was a very, very clear reference. I thought that was a very clear Brian De Palma reference, and I appreciated it. I'm like, they know their film history.
Well, and that is the good thing, though. They say they're all, the 3 of them, they're all big horror fans.
Yeah.
And so that it shows here.
Yeah, I'll confess, I thought that this was skewing a little bit more closely to Eli Roth's Thanksgiving trailer from Grindhouse. So I was hoping that we were going to get a knife through the
vagina.
dick.
Oh my God, yes. I was waiting for that. Yes.
So I doubt you, if y'all haven't seen Grindhouse here, there's a fake trailer in this Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez movie. But yeah, there's someone for a fake horror movie called Thanksgiving. And basically there's a little girl or a cheerleader that's jumping on a trampoline.
Oh my God.
And she's doing the splits, but then someone like raises a knife through the trampoline and she just lands on it.
God.
And they cut right as she lands.
Oh,
it's
that's
so
awful.
perfect.
I thought that was what was going to happen because she talks about her split all the time, like how she can do it and Gloria can't. And
Yes.
I thought that would be like the perfect revenge.
But as you said, someone had to die doing a death drop. I mean,
true.
or what's the point of the...
Exactly.
What's the point of the title,
Well, I mean, we should also acknowledge this title, well, yes, is referencing death drops, but also it's clearly a riff on Drop Dead Gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's actually a clever title. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Which is an amazing movie, by the way. We love it.
Ah, love it.
Oh, well, it is on our to cover list for the future.
Oh my God. We quote lines.
Jesus loves winners.
Oh, me without a stitch of makeup.
Who are you? Who are you?
Oh, she says that all the time.
Same dippy little look on her face.
That's a classic.
Yeah. Okay, so Janet is now dead, and we've got this revitalized Gloria performing her heart out on stage to these blood-spattered women who don't seem to even notice. This is when Tony gets a delivery at his house, and we are doing a 7 riff. So
7, yeah.
The pup's head is in the box, and then he gets abducted. Dwayne is putting things together. He realizes that Brian has also gone missing, and he connects the bingo piece to Gloria. So he hitches a ride from genre icon Linnea Quigley, popping up.
Making the most of her 3 lines,
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, because you see her in the credits and you're like, ooh, Linnea Quigley. And then literally, it's a blink and you miss it. But yeah, she's doing it.
Yep, she made it work.
So we see that Gloria has Tony tied up with Christmas lights. And this is when we get this villain monologue. And, I think you could even confuse it like, oh, this is the same actor doing it, but it's not. So I guess we should give Sederquist props for doing a really good impersonation, but also kind of slaying this monologue.
I agree. Not only did he really nail the older Gloria's style of speaking, but they also really nailed the makeup so that it really did look like the same person, only with better skin. For the first few minutes of her scenes, I thought they had taped up the actor's face to make him look younger.
I'm telling you, like this conversation we had 5 minutes ago, I did not know it was a different person.
Really?
Or that they had made the actor look older in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and then the real one now, like the real age, whatever.
Well, that's
Right.
100% what I thought they did. Yeah, I thought that they just did old age makeup.
When she did the monologue, that's actually when I realized it was a younger actress because her voice is clearly that of a younger person. Like, older people, their voices get a rasp, they get deeper, and you could tell that this was someone who was at least 20 years younger.
Right. Now, what do you think of this final outfit? Because it's kind of like snowflake. It's interesting. I don't even really know how to describe it.
The little sequin mini dress she's wearing?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's notable that, you know, when you look at older Gloria's outfits, they're very old, campy drag. It's a lot, and there's a lot of references to the 60s in her drag.
Right.
And this outfit, it looks very current. It looks like something like a young woman or a young drag queen would wear roughly right around now. Yeah, I think it works. I think it works in the lighting situation because the lighting's, you know, it's murder lighting. It's all red and green and blue in the background. So she's got all these colors bouncing off her. I think it works in the scene.
And it's the type of outfit that a younger drag queen would wear. You know, more showy.
Yeah, it's a lot more skin.
Right. Sexier.
It's very short. Yeah. It's a very short dress. You know, lots of sequins. You know, it's just, it worked for, you can see that. You can see a lot of younger drag queens wearing that.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting, right? Because we've got a younger looking person delivering this monologue while wearing a younger person's outfit, but all the words are saying, I put in my time and I'm old and I'm bitchy and jaded about all of this, right?
Well, and I did transcribe this whole monologue, but I'm not going to say it. I think this monologue is great. But I did pull a quote from Peyton St. James, so Gloria Hole herself, who talks about, again, not to get too deep, but just about this the ageism being brought up in this monologue. So St. James says, you know, the film deals with a lot of things, and ageism being very prevalent among them. And it was an issue that I had seen in real life, and I don't think there's anyone in any community that doesn't deal with ageism, sexism, racism, body issues, everything under the sun. So I'd seen it, having been doing drag for almost 30 years. And, you know, my whole philosophy, maybe about 10 or 15 years into doing drag, was you really have to realize that when you're young, it's okay to just be pretty. And then after a little while, maybe you're not so pretty anymore, so you better be talented. And then at a certain point, your body starts to give out and you go, okay, I'm not as pretty as I was. I'm not as talented as I was. I better be something else. I better reinvent myself. And that kind of carried me through, you know, the last 30 years or so.
That's an interesting point.
No, I totally agree. And her wonderful line, you know, my tuck is everlasting. I mean, that, so many layers there, no pun intended.
Yeah.
You know, it just, you know, you're speaking your heart out. You're just saying that, you know, I'm still here. I can still do, you know, something.
Right.
I can still act. I can still perform. I can do whatever.
It was a great killer's monologue. It was delivered really, really well. Some of the best acting in the film. And as you said, it really touched on a lot of themes in gay life and for aging gays, in the history of the gay social community. And look, when I was young, I used to hear older gays talk about how we didn't know anything.
Right.
And I used to resent it so much. Right. And now that I am an older gay, I'm like, oh, I think those old bitches were right. But you learn, I mean, it just depends on where you are in your life and how your life has treated you. But I am very, very conscious as a mature gay not to do that, not to be that way, not to attack younger people for being young, because I was too. I remember what that was like. Right. I can remember being in a bar and thinking how tragic it was that there were like 55, 65-year-old men at the bar. And that's some snotty ass bitch.
Right.
But I mean, it's also natural. And when I hear men my age complain about young people, like young gays, I always call them out for it. I'm like, come on, bitch, what were you like 30 years ago in the bar? Did you give the time of day to some 70-year-old? Of course you didn't. That's just the way it works. It's brutal. But when you have a social structure that is entirely male, that's what's going to happen. That is, you are going to create a brutal, brutal social system.
Right, but having said all that, I do expect a little more from the younger generation now, because you do have the tools, you have the internet, you have all these places where you can go to, even under your covers in bed, so your parents don't know what you're doing, to do some little research, bitches, you know. Well,
I mean, I think it also, I mean, from younger generations, it's a thing where it's like, you know, older generations didn't have as many tools, rights, affordabilities, and privileges as the younger queer community has today. And so I think, I mean, even like I mean, for Joe and I, it's a thing where it's like, yeah, man, I'm like, shit, like, I'm so glad I didn't have social media and TikTok. But at the same time, those are really good tools for these people to, like, find other people like themselves. Like, for me, it was like, I was in high school theater. I met other gays at theater tournaments, like, when we were going around.
Right.
But... Or when we finally got MySpace, I was like, cool, let me, like, filter, like, man who likes man that are under the age of 18, which, in hindsight, that's a really dangerous tool.
Right, exactly.
But, like, I feel like maybe there's a misconception that a lot of older generation, the older generation is, like, has jealousy towards the younger generation for being afforded these things that they didn't have.
I think there's some truth to that. We have friends, every summer we go to Fire Island because a friend of ours has a house out there. And
Nice.
It is nice. And when we're there, it's, you know, it's all guys in their 50s and above in the social group. And we have had several conversations over the years about this sort of thing. And one of the things I remember bringing up, I think it was last summer, actually, there was a round robin of complaining about the younger gays. And I said, you know, how many of you knew who Marsha P. Johnson was when you were 25? Because most of these young kids, they actually know that shit. They know who Marsha P. Johnson was because they're, you know, there's more, as Lorenzo said, there's more out there for them. There's more information for them to have. When I was a teenager and I wanted to find out about being gay, I had to go to adult bookstores and steal gay magazines. Right. I had to shove them in my shirt and walk out.
Well, that's the thing. If you wanted to know anything about gay history or queer history, you know, you had to buy a book. You know, if you're lucky, if you can find a book about it. And then how are you going to read?
To risk outing yourself too, right?
And how are you going to read that book? You know, where are you going to read that book?
Right.
I mean, you know, I hear, because we get emails all the time, I hear from a lot of gays saying that because they have a computer now, they can pretend they're doing something else, and they can just close a window now. You know, if their parents are coming or something like that. So you have more options. I'm not saying it's a lot easier, but you do have more sources now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to imply that it's, like, easy, period. It is easier.
Yeah, exactly.
It's different, right? Like, that's one of the things that's really hard, particularly as, like, we are all living through this, but we get stuck in certain time periods, right? So, like, to us, there's an older generation of gay men who did things in a certain way, and we're like, ugh, well, we're not like them. Without realizing, oh, we are somebody else's older gay generation, and we're doing things that they're like, ugh, I would never do it that way.
Exactly.
And I will tell you, the first time I was called daddy in an app, I was just like, oh.
You had a conniption fit?
Because I was like, no, I'm not. But then I realized it was like a 22-year-old, and I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. And you're like, wait, am I daddy or zaddy? Zaddy's the good one, right?
Oh, my God.
I wasn't even 30 the first time someone called me daddy. And of course I was offended. But now it's a fucking compliment. Are you kidding me? I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, but question mark. Did you have a mustache at the time?
No.
Damn it.
It was the 90s. We didn't do mustaches then.
No, we do.
Oh, yeah, it's a bad
The gays didn't have facial hair in the 90s.
I'm just like, call me whatever. Just get undressed.
Oh.
Love it.
I am not going to get into it, but I know one instance where someone called you something and you were completely turned off by it. But I won't say.
No.
The story's for offline.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Bring this home.
Yep. So we've got this fantastic monologue. We've got the capper. The tuck is everlasting. And Dwayne has arrived, but he is kind of warily watching from the sidelines as we finally get the payoff to this fat suit pillow. And Gloria just drills into Tony with an electric meat cutter. So this is our final big death. His intestines just go all over the place. Mm-hmm. And then a lengthy battle ensues between Dwayne and young Gloria, involving, here we go, strangling, intestine eating, and glass smashing slap fights. That just goes on and on and on.
But she does have that line before she feeds in the intestines and goes, "You said you like to eat ass." And
that is horrifying.
I gotta say, these intestines, like, they're a little firm, but I actually kind of like them. Like, they look okay.
They're a little thin. I mean, but yeah, sure.
Oh my God. All right, you two are scaring me now.
We do see a lot of gore in our weekly podcasting.
This is true. Yeah.
I do want to note that I saw an interview with, I think it was Brian, who said that that scene was originally supposed to be in Gloria's kitchen, which is why there's a turkey cutting knife. And when they moved it to this is I saw this interview and I was like, okay, they really were just having fun with this. They had a discussion about it and they were like, well, why would she have a turkey cutting knife in the bingo hall? And they were all like, fuck it, let's just do it anyway. Like they didn't care that it didn't make any sense. Exactly. And that's why you can't apply like stringent, criteria to a film like this. It's people fucking around and having fun and creating their own little version of art.
Right.
I'm looking at her dress again because we have it on now. It's a beautiful dress. She looks amazing.
She does.
An amazing killer, young killer.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe this is the trade-off that perhaps this is what I should have acknowledged earlier, is that the killer, when we see them committing murders earlier in the film, it's an underwhelming costume, but then this killer reveal, quite literally, makes up for it in a lot of ways.
And she's got that long blonde wig on, which is great for a fight scene.
Yeah.
Because she can toss her hair all over the place.
She does, because she and Dwayne are literally just like bashing each other back and forth for about 10 minutes here.
Isn't it kind of implied that she has enhanced strength or something? Post blood. She picks him up by one hand.
Yeah.
So, and then they sort of imply later that they are literal vampires.
Mm-hmm.
There's that scene I don't want to jump ahead. We'll get to that.
Well, I think the reading can definitely be made. Yeah, and we're really almost there. So Dwayne hits her in the face with her drag mom's ashes, and then she ends up getting impaled on a Christmas star, and he bashes her head in with the nativity Jesus.
The cut whenever he drops the wall of the partition on her, and it's clearly a mannequin.
I was like on the floor laughing. That was brilliant.
Well, and that was like a plywood, right? It looked like it weighed about 2 pounds. It's also amazing.
And him shoving the paper receipts in her mouth, or the bingo receipts, that's actually a Misery reference.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that moment, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we basically end the movie thinking he has killed her, and then we jump ahead 6 months. He is now the boss of the outhouse, and we see Gloria is actually secretly alive. She's driving a convertible, and she's got tragedy along for the ride. And that's how we leave the film.
Which made us question, how did he get the bar?
Yeah, I mean, you just inherit the bar when the owner gets killed? I don't quite get how that worked.
It's the hierarchy of employment. It's the last employee standing inherits the bar.
Well, it would have gone to the pup, but the pup was dead.
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe the pup had a will where he was like, well, Dwayne is really nice. Maybe I'll leave everything I own to him. And then Tony left everything to the pup.
I have to laugh. The green screen in the final scene is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good.
I loved it. I loved it.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and she kept taking her hands off the wheel to check her makeup and everything. It was hilarious.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you referenced Thelma and Louise, though, because I definitely thought that as well.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I can see that now.
So I watched the movie yesterday, and on my Letterboxd, which if you don't know, it's like a movie tracking app, so you can log what movies you watch. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5, and I was like, I like a lot of what they're doing, but I think it's edited very poorly, and I don't think a lot of it's very funny, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Watched it today, laughed a lot more with my friends, gave it a 3 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. And
talking about it now, I feel like I'm bumping it up to a 3.5 because I'm just like, God damn, this is just such a fun movie, even though it doesn't always work.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, you got to respect it for what it is. And for all the flaws in the script and the plot, and there are things that really do not make any sense at all, but they actually do wrap it up.
Yeah.
It ties everything off. It stays consistent with all of its themes. All of the characters stay in character. There is not a moment where anybody acts out of character or acts strangely. So
that is true. Yeah.
When you take into account that it took them 1.5 years, that none of these people are professionals, that they did this on the weekend, the fact that it's in any way cohesive is kind of a miracle.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I said in the beginning, I had no idea what I was going to watch, and I loved it. I thought it was funny, and, funny. I laughed many, many times. Some great costumes and some great acting, like Gloria Holt, for example. And I saw a dick. I mean, come on.
Right? What more do you want?
When are you going to see one of those?
It's a winner. The movie's a winner.
Is it a winner or a wiener?
It's both.
So they're actually working on another project, and I wasn't going to say this, but honestly, I think we need to. So 2 of the directors, Michael J. Ahern and Brandon Paris, they are going to be doing a film called Saint Drogo, and they co-wrote it with Michael McAdam, who plays Gloria Hull,
right,
and Matthew Pidge, who plays Janet Fitness.
Okay.
It is so it's Saint Drogo, and it is a supernatural slow burn, thematically inspired by 70s horror like Rosemary's Baby and The Wicker Man.
Oh, wow.
A gay couple, whose relationship has grown a bit strained, take an impromptu trip to Provincetown, Cape Cod in the off-season. Caleb, one half of the couple, has been plagued by nightmares of his ex, who has been working in Provincetown for the summer. When they arrive to town, it appears Caleb's ex has gone missing. As disturbing hallucinations continue to haunt Caleb, he becomes more determined to find him, but the closer he gets, the sooner he nears the sinister secret that the town is hiding.
That's a very big change of pace, but hearing the description, I actually think that they would do very well with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be very honest here. As soon as the movie ended, I turned to Tom and I said, I need to watch more movies like this. Yes, I think it's fun. You know, it's fun and you just enjoy it. You have a great time.
Like I said, I used to work on a lot of low-budget films, and I could see the work in this film. I could see the points at which they got exhausted. I could tell when it was starting to get away from them. But all of that gives me way more respect. Nobody on this film was a professional.
Yeah.
So for them to produce this and execute it and pull it off is that is a hell of an accomplishment. And regardless of, bad acting or weird scripting or, literally 40% of the film is out of focus. But, I just walk away from something like this with nothing but respect for the people who did it. Like, good for you. You really pulled it together and you made that.
Right.
It's charming.
Yeah.
There's a charm to it.
It's charming, and it reminds you of all the queer movies, directed by John Waters, the Vegas in Space we mentioned, and so many others, that you see the passion. And it's a great contribution, to the queer history.
Yeah.
I mean,
Vegas in Space, it took them, I think, 7 years to shoot that film. And Doris Fish was the drag queen star, and basically the mastermind behind the film. And we wrote about her in our book. And what I loved about her story is that she turned to tricks for 7 years to fund the film.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Right? And I'm like, God, that is so quintessentially queer art. It's using your sexuality, it's using your body, it's using everything you have. And this was like late 80s, early 90s. And I look at a film like this as just on that continuum. And the thing with Doris Fish is that she unfortunately died of AIDS before the film opened.
Right.
And so a film like this sits on that continuum. And thankfully, nobody had to give their life to have this film made. But it's still of the same thing. It's still queer people pulling together and through just sheer force of will,
right,
creating something. And when you get to the end of it and that thing is fully created, it almost doesn't matter the quality of it because the fact of its existence is practically a miracle.
Yeah, it's so quintessentially queer and also so quintessentially drag, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. That's kind of why I walked away from this film loving it, even though I could not call it a great film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, do we want to wrap this up? We good?
oh my God, this was so much fun.
It really was. It was a lot of fun. You guys were great.
Oh my God, you guys are the best. And I was a little nervous. I was like, oh my God, will I have anything to say? But you guys are so welcoming, so wonderful. Thank you.
Well, we are happy to have not changed your minds, but put to rest any qualms you may have had. And before we can actually announce, Joe, we can finally announce what we're covering next week. We don't have to fucking tease it anymore. But Tom and Lorenzo, first, again, thank you both so much.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
And let everyone, where can everyone find you on social media? And, pimp what you want to pimp.
Okay, it's Tom and Lorenzo spelled out on all of our social media, on Facebook,
Right.
It's good branding. Good branding.
Oh, that's why we named the site after ourselves. And of course, there's tomandlorenzo.com. The podcast, which comes out every week. We have to get up in the morning and record our podcast, which is Tom and Lorenzo's Pop Style Opinion Fest. And as you noted, our book is Legendary Children, the First Decade of RuPaul's Drag Race in the Last Century of Queer Life. It was picked by NPR as one of the best books of 2020. So if anyone wants to read about the history of drag, the history of queer art, there's an entire chapter on queer acting and underground queer films with drag queens in them, which is where there's a whole bit on Vegas in Space. There's a whole examination of John Waters and Divine, and then the underground theatrical community that gave us Charles Busch and Charles Ludlam and all of these drag performers. One thing I wanted to point out in this discussion is drag acting works extremely well in genre productions. It works extremely well in horror, it works extremely well in science fiction, and it works extremely well in crime and musicals. So there's this long...
So heightened.
That's exactly it. Any sort of drama that is heightened and has this heightened sense of reality or has a melodramatic sense of reality, you can stick a drag queen in there and she works just fine.
Nice. So true.
Yep.
Well, thank you all once again, and then I'll close us out, Joe. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Horror Queers. Join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. And go to our YouTube channel to look at our coverage of queer horror film shorts, as well as our Horror Queers Hangouts, where we talk with two of our peers every month about a random horror topic. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. And if you want more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. We're in March. Yes, we are in the middle of March. So we've got episodes on No Exit, Fresh, X, and a fun discussion on our favorite horror films where the villain wins. That was a really fun conversation. Our audio commentary for the month will be on Blade 2, just in time for its 20th anniversary. And
God, every time you say it, it just makes me feel so fucking old.
But Joe, before we sign off, what are we fucking covering next week?
Oh my God, I can finally do this again. So we have spent the last 10 weeks talking about films from the 2010s to the present day. Trace, it's time to go back in time and revisit some queer horror history. So we're going to look at the film that really kicked off the slasher craze. So we're going to go back to 1960, but we're not talking about that fucking psycho shit. We're going to talk about Peeping Tom.
Yeah, we are. And this is a first-time watch for you, right?
Yes, in its entirety. I've seen many, many clips.
Oh my God, I love this movie. I fucking love Peeping Tom. So
cool.
Everyone tune in. But until then, we can cross out Death Drop Gorgeous.
Indeed. And cross out Horror Queers.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.